So thrilled to welcome you here and super excited to see all of you. I mean, I know it's the space is tight, but thank you for being here in the morning. So since the morning, obviously you've heard of like the interesting cryptography that has essentially enabled things on ICP. You have heard about chain fusion, the seamless interoperability like framework that connects different chains seamlessly with the Power ICP. You have also heard about the ecosystem, but what's a chain without a proper governance system, right? So I think here we are here to talk about like what does democracy on blockchain look like? Who is actually controlling the blockchain? Is it a centralized entity? Is it the community? So let's talk about decentralized autonomous organizations. Let's talk about DAO. So with that, I would like to invite my panel here. So Vanessa Grellet, managing partner for Arche Capital, Dr. Nag, who is the founder of G20 Group, and David Fisher, co-founder of Nagendra Capital. Please join me in welcoming. Thank you for being here. Awesome. So yeah, let's start with a quick round of introductions. So I think what brought you into Web3 and what got you excited into ICP, right? I think let's start with that.
Great. So excited to be here. I discovered Bitcoin back in 2012. My background is in traditional finance. I spent like 15 years on Wall Street, 10 of which at the New York Stock Exchange, and discovered Bitcoin back in 2012. Thought it was interesting, but didn't make it my full-time employment. And then back in 2016, I had the opportunity to meet Joe Lubin, the founder, one of the co-founders of Ethereum and the founder of Consensus. We hit it off and I joined the project. I thought, Ethereum had a really interesting perspective, building a platform for developers to build apps, which was a little bit different than the value proposition of Bitcoin at the time. And back in 2016, we built something called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And that's where I met Dom, who was part of this conversation very early on. And, ICP was considered or was themed to be like the twin sister of Ethereum at the time. And so we built this relationship since then. So pretty excited to be here today. And now I manage a VC fund that invests in early stage projects.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think most of you who don't know, Dom had been coming from the early Ethereum community. He had been active in the Ethereum space since, I believe, 2013, 2014. And the original idea of World Computer came to Dom around the time when he was like, oh, if you're talking about Ethereum as a world computer, then it should be able to really run anything, right? That's like when you're a computer, it's not just like token movements, but it should be able to run the entire software. And I think that was the vision he started with, give and take 10 plus years ago. And here we are. And yeah, thank you. Dr. Nag.
Thank you. So my name is Nag. I come from Zurich, actually. So I came to Switzerland 22 years ago. I studied at ETH Zurich, in PhD in machine learning and AI. And I worked in traditional finance and currency and bond trading derivatives for 20 years, founded G20 in 2010. I discovered Bitcoin in 2016, a little bit late, and it actually due to a democratic decision by the Indian government to ban all large denominated notes. So that incident led to a lot of small and medium cap companies actually to go bankrupt in India, and a lot of people suffered because there is a big parallel economy in India which doesn't really get taxed and they don't have bank accounts, etc. And Bitcoin started trading at a 20-30% premium in India to international markets. But then what it changed me was if it could happen in a democratic country like India, anything can happen anywhere. So we need a sovereign, non-sovereign backed currency. And I come from the currencies background, kind of really good understanding, why inflation, countries like Venezuela, a lot of countries suffer with bad governance, etc., can happen anywhere. That made me look more deep into Bitcoin. And then actually we started a desk. So we're a 70 people company today, investment into a lot of crypto projects, trading, market making, also helping with launching large tokens. My relationship with DFINITY is being a local foundation, and also DOM has a very great pedigree in terms of coding and very deep tech. So I was always influenced by very deep tech within crypto. People influenced me by Vitalik, Joe, Dom, and several other people, and I really liked what ICP was doing at the time, and project went through a lot of like structural reform, and also the way it's fully on chain. So today we work with them and invest in several of the projects, support ICP, very big backers of ICP ecosystem, and like how the tech is really advanced compared to a lot of other chains. So that's the background that I have.
It's actually very, very interesting. I think you touched on an aspect which is that you learned from the demonetization time in India. Interestingly, that was also like my moment for like getting more into crypto. So at that point in time, I was actually working in the payment space in a startup in India, and what we realized was like basically overnight we were just like hanging out with our friends and a party, and we realized that overnight basically all the like currency notes were to be disappear by midnight. And us being in the payment space at that time, and so this was the company called Paytm, which basically rode the wave. But the idea was like from next day on, all the shopkeepers and vendors and whatnot, they just didn't have any mechanism to accept any form of money. And these people are like a lot of them just operate day to day on a very basic kind of an income, and that was a very like big shocking thing for me. Is like, okay, how is that even possible? But I mean, that's the kind of thing where you need this peer-to-peer government is one aspect, but then I mean that was like it just opened my eyes for Bitcoin, and I was like, okay, let's read the white paper again, maybe. But thank you. It's David.
Hey everyone, I'm David. I'm one of the co-founders of 9 Yards. We're a billion-dollar growth stage VC firm focused primarily in B2B software at the growth stage in fintech, which I co-founded with the UK's former Chancellor, George Osborne. My involvement in Web3 began when I met Dominic and the DFINITY team back in their Palo Alto office in 2018, and I was immediately captivated by the sheer ambitiousness of the entire project to completely replace a traditional cloud with a crypto cloud. It really is the real deal and the team to back. And ever since then, I've been an active community member. I'm a Gen 1 node provider. I'm a voting member of Synapse, which is the largest named neuron. And I'm an investor in a number of ICP projects, including Hot or Not, which is now called Viral, Kinnick, Bitfinity, Bionic, Discover, and Memefighter. It's fun being here. I can see all my internet friends that I've spoken to on Twitter. There's a lot of familiar faces from the monthly R&Ds. There's an amazing community, and I'm grateful to be included today.
Very well. Thank you, David. Awesome. So I think given all of you are coming from like an investor kind of a background, so why don't we just start like before we get into the DAOs, like let's start with maybe the macro view of the world, right? So if we think about what's happening in the blockchain space, in the cryptocurrency space, there's a lot of momentum right now, and I mean lots of interesting things are happening. I think I was reading this chart where currently meme coins are the best performing asset class, right? I mean, like that's one end of the paradigm, and then you have this Bitcoin and ETFs, which is driving a lot of momentum. We are hearing very strong rumors that an Ethereum ETF is like nearly imminent, maybe today, tomorrow. So what do you see as the state of the market? Let's start with like a quick macro view, and then we'll kind of get into more like, okay, how do we manage all of this on a blockchain in the form of DAO? So Vanessa, do you want to start?
So I think you have to distinguish sort of the liquid assets and the price action around those, and the builders building applications and future projects that are going to be liquid. So, but one influences the other. And we've seen, through the last cycle and the collapse of FTX, what happened to the price formation and the impact on the private markets. So what we see now is mainstream adoption, really interest from large asset allocators in the financial world who understand now that this asset class is a legitimate asset class with Bitcoin, with ETH, and hopefully in the future, ICP, ETF. So we're going to see a continuation of this ETF adoption of various projects, and that's going to impact the demand for these assets. And then that impacts the private markets where investors like us come in very early, support the entrepreneurs and help them grow and scale. So in terms of themes and sectors, as you've said, meme coins are best performing assets. That's for traders, maybe not for builders, but it is a phenomenon of the entire ecosystem. What's interesting to us as we're long-term investors is what are the sectors that help these large L1s develop, whether it's DeFi, whether it's the DeFi primitives, whether it's AI or other sectors. And we see, you have to distinguish the hype versus the actual tech that's being built. And I think what's interesting with ICP is that you have time to focus on the tech beyond the hype. And that's how I think about the global macro situation. Obviously, the interest rate impact is important. I think we're going to see rates higher for longer in the US. Maybe there's a disconnect with the European markets. But in that context, these assets, which are a little bit decorrelated from the interest rates and traditional business models, are interesting asset classes.
Very cool.
So I think the most important way to look at crypto, if you look at it, is one, if you plot Federal Reserve interest rates versus Bitcoin performance, often it's negatively correlated, which means if you have zero rates, price goes up because it's a kind of higher liquidity in the markets. And if the interest rates would go high, Bitcoin price should go lower. Right now, we are 5.25 to 5.5%. That's a Federal Reserve bandwidth. And Bitcoin is trading at all-time high. It's mainly because of the ETF approval. There is a lot of flow. Just imagine if the rates would be zero, where Bitcoin would trade. So that's the first way how we look at the world. Then you have Ethereum, 19B4, which is the SEC directive to exchanges, was actually initiated 2 days ago. Very surprising because everybody almost written off ETF approval of Ethereum. They thought it's a security, but this paves the way to a lot of more ETFs like Solana, like hopefully Internet Computer as well to be approved. Very strong growth rates, very strong employment, very strong economy signals we are seeing across US. So I think it will be very difficult for Federal Reserve to cut rates in our view. Than market is pricing. It could be possible that there is no rate cut till the year end, which means that perhaps technology stocks and S&P 500 may go sideways a little bit higher. Then yesterday night, we had NVIDIA results, record-breaking results. Stock trades are the 6% high. So AI is for real. And I believe that we haven't seen yet, because right now, where the NVIDIA money coming from is cloud deployment, and then a little bit from inference, which is where you call a LLM model, and then it gives an output. So this is only tip of the iceberg. We will see every company pivoting towards AI or a part of AI to improve their bottom line and the revenues. And that's what is going to happen. And if you're following, every big L1 chain is trying to push towards AI, all competitors of ICP as well. And I'm very sure that Dom and the team will push very hard towards having more AI within the ecosystem. That's one area. We're very positive on the crypto markets. Meme coins are best performing 330% average. Real world assets, which are tokenized assets, second best performing. Liquid staking derivatives, AI, identity, L1s, least performing there. So we see more liquid staking derivatives and real world assets also continue to outperform. Then I think DeFi also is actually will pick up in Q2 and in Q3 and Q4 in our view. Strong dollar. We see very strong dollar across the space. If you see, Japanese yen is significantly weaker. Chinese economy still take very long time to actually recover. In our view, you see the strength of Swiss franc, which is nothing but a sign of European weakness. So Europe will struggle to really grow. Swiss franc will remain strong. Gold also is a sign of where a lot of Chinese assets are. The governments are diversifying away from the US dollar into gold. So gold, Bitcoin, some of the top assets are outperforming. And ICP is a clear big winner of this cycle in our view, compared to like last cycle where it made into top 20, and we believe that with right efforts and everything can go much higher. So very positive on ICP. It's really clearly underpriced the value, but please do your own research. You can get caught in the cycle of buying at the top, etc. Very positive. Crypto is a legitimate asset class. US regulation yesterday that passed also paves the way for a proper, you will see more and more institutional players entering the space. So very positive overall.
So in my view, there's really three big key themes in crypto. The first is Bitcoin is digital gold. The second is an upgrade to our financial system as we know it. And the third is Web3. So Bitcoin's taken one as digital gold, but I believe ICP can take Web3, and Utopia, when it launches, can definitely upgrade our financial system. In order for 2 and 3 to really become a reality, in my opinion, and for Web3 to not be totally siloed from the rest of the financial system, we need regulatory clarity. And I think what we're seeing today is we're seeing a push forward in DC, where while in the past, crypto was a political issue, Democrat meant bad and Republican meant good. I think what we've seen in the past 2 weeks has been a major shift in American politics, and we may start getting some regulatory clarity. It's interesting because the roots of crypto are quite anti-government and anti sort of regulation. But if you look at any sort of dollar bill, you'll see a figurehead of authority. You'll see a king, you'll see a queen, you'll see a president. And finance has always been regulated since the very beginning of finance. And so in this cycle, I think that second theme, the upgrade to our existing financial system, is really, really taking hold with the new introduction of regulation. And not only are we seeing the Bitcoin ETF launching, potentially the Ethereum ETF, but also an explosion in stablecoins, which is fascinating, honestly, as an upgrade to the fiat system. And then also on the security token side, I'm sure you've all seen the news of BlackRock issuing treasuries on chain. And that fund, I believe, is now, even a couple of weeks after launching, already at 400 million and growing quickly.
Awesome. So, as we think about all of these like different kind of things, it's kind of like crypto has established as an asset class. There is like a theme of, okay, there will be a need for a decentralized AI. There is financial applications that are being built. There is fully on-chain applications and social networks and games. Everyone is trying to build all this infrastructure. But let's say when we think about it, like who is actually controlling and governing this entire infrastructure, and how is that being managed? So I'll just give like a quick 2-minute overview on like how things are done on ICP, but then I would love to seek your opinion on like, what do you think about these models? What are the positives? What are the challenges? And how can like this improve, right? So Internet Computer itself is governed by a DAO called, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. Think of it as a cooperative or a community. It's governed by the DAO of anyone who holds an ICP token, and kind of stakes it, basically locks it and says, okay, they get a voting power. So they can, so if every one of you have, let's say, a certain number of ICP, you can essentially lock in what we call as neurons. And then you vote on every decision that happens on the protocol, which node machines to be added in the network, what kind of like development activities should we perform, what kind of upgrades that happen to the network. All of these decisions actually happen by the community of people, like you and me. We work with DFINITY or not, but these people have the collective power to take how does the network evolve? So as I think in the earlier panel, Enzo was talking about how like ICP is like seeing hundreds of these proposals almost like every week, and we have seen so many different upgrades. It's all thanks to the collective power of token holders, which participate in this democratic process and update. So this is the network nervous system, which governs the entirety of the ICP network. And then we have what we call as service nervous systems. So the idea is that you take the same primitive and you extend it to any form of application, service, infrastructure that's running on ICP. They also have a similar governance system where, let's say you have a chat application. If you hold the tokens of that chat, you can decide how this will evolve. So anyone can write a piece of code and just say, I would like to change the color of this like user experience. Let's change it from light mode to dark mode. Anyone can write a piece of code, submit a proposal as long as they hold a single token. And as soon as the community accepts it, the application changes. I think that's the power of like running these fully on-chain governance DAOs and so on. Yeah, so this is the ICP world, but you have been seeing this. You've been in the Web3 space in general. How do you see this similar, different than what happens on other networks? Are there some things that we can learn from? Are there some things that where we could be a role model for other chains? Would love to hear your perspective.
Great. So for me, governance is the most crucial issue in open source decentralized protocols. These protocols need to be decentralized, and there needs to be a governance model for them to become permanent and exist throughout time. The vision that we have for blockchains and decentralized protocols is these platforms that will stand the test of time, unlike corporations, with contributors and participants that vote in a decentralized way. It's also crucial from a legal perspective that these DAOs are decentralized, so they're not deemed a security, and that has huge implications for people working on them. There are different models that we see and different types of proof of stake models, et cetera, in other blockchains. I think what's unique about ICP is having everything on chain and everything that's already really well thought through. And I think the opportunity is, one, you can think about changing the model for ICP in the future, but you can also experiment a lot with the SNS networks. So all the applications have the opportunity to think creatively about how they organize their governance, whether it's on, what does it take to stake? What is the voting power per individual or holder of the token? What is the unbonding period for staking? What is the power what is the attack vectors for the system? And so, when you guys are, and I'm talking to the builders in the room, when you're thinking about the governance for your dApps, you don't need to replicate exactly what ICP is doing. You have some wiggle room, but I think it's really important to think about it and how is this going to make my dApp a permanent application that everyone can contribute to and that can grow and succeed?
Thank you.
So there are many varieties of DAOs, and when a voting happens, which is in ICP, it's done through a wait and quiet algorithm, which if you have a proposal, I think initial period is like 4 days. Some proposals can run up to 8 days, and then a simple majority of more people saying yes, 50% above, or you have 3% of the total votes in favor of the proposal, then it gets passed. Now, there are a lot of other DAOs, and what audience probably may appreciate is that ICP is a part of the DAO, which is NNS, which is the biggest DAO. I think Uniswap, and there are other DAOs which are the number 2, number 3, and this is the biggest DAO where everybody is contributing. If you take like a company can go bankrupt, company can have different CEOs, etc., but this has no leader. So when you have no leader, a leaderless organization runs on some rules, and code is the law, as we say. So here you have a governance is run through completely on chain. And there is also, like we were earlier discussing about, if you have 51%, if somebody can control the entire ICP system, they can control the governance process and change everything. So how do you actually protect itself? So there is a very delay on the neurons, which are basically gives you the more voting power. So there is a lot of protective mechanism that was thought through when the constitution of ICP or DFINITY was written. So I think a lot of off-chain versus on-chain discussions always will be there, but I think ICP and DFINITY as a part of NNS DAO, has one of the best governance models. Of course, there are also issues with that where you cannot really do easily liquidity staking, etc. We'll discuss that later anyway, because if you do liquidity staking, you have neurons that you would earn, which also gives you a lot of voting power to say. So those are the additional problems that would come because of a very lengthy, voting power there. If you stake your ICP, and for 8 years, you get more voting power basically. And then this DAO, the token actually gives you not just some, governance rights, but also a lot of say. It is used for storage. It has a very high throughput, and it's one of the most advanced DAOs in the entire crypto ecosystem.
I think you made a couple of very interesting points that I would like to kind of address. Right, you said like when the constitution of ICP was written, the initial protocol, right? But I think the way it stands today is like now anyone has a power as long as you have one token stake. They can change the constitution. You can propose amendments, which are the proposal which everyone is doing every day. And I think it's about this design space on what can you do to innovate and change so that it kind of evolves, and rather than being stuck like with, okay, there was some First Amendment back in the day, and then people have this right to bear guns, and all of those things are like controversial topics. Wouldn't get there, but the fact that you can evolve as the thinking of the community evolves, as the number of participants, you have more developers that are building on ICP, and they have their own say. They would like to say, okay, how this thing that's very interesting and crucial. So yeah, thank you, David.
So what I'd say is it's early days in DAO land and Web3, but the NNS and the SNS is doing an incredible job. Clearly, the basic idea is to incentivize the users to become owners, and through financial incentives, you can encourage participation. If you look at the forums, there's thousands of posts. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with all the different things that are going on in the ICP ecosystem, and it's pretty incredible. One thing which is pretty special about the NNS and about the ICP governance system is that, sure, if you have a small amount of vote, your direct voting power will be small, but because of the follow system, you can convince the community to follow you. You can become a named neuron, and then you can have clout in this governance system. And this concept of financial rewards is important, but also the concept of status and gaining influence within the community is equally important. The other thing is that because the big brains here at DFINITY have built an incredible DAO framework through the SNS, developers don't need to worry about all the nitty-gritty details about building DAO tooling, which is very, very, very complicated. Quite frankly, a lot of DAOs on other chains are just fake. They're centralized, they're susceptible to hacks. The developers have the keys to the treasury. They do the motion proposals offline, and then you have to trust that they do it. With ICP, the whole system itself is governed through the NNS, and so it's done in an open, transparent way. And then the DAOs themselves that operate through the SNS, it's open source, and it's a continual, unstoppable train of evolution. The NNS has thousands of proposals that have been done today. The SNS is the same thing, and the gap between ICP and all the other chains has only continued to widen and widen over time.
Thank you. I think we're almost out on time, but would like to have one last question from all of you, maybe a quick one. So maybe, David, we can start from you. What is your one wish with respect to, okay, what would you like to have different or better in the ICP governance? Or maybe if anyone wants to start first. We're running on negative time. So,
so if you have certain individuals or entities controlling a lot of voting power, what happens after they pass away or after they are not anymore active? So what happens to this voting power? So this is very important because we are very early stage of, it's a third anniversary. So it's a very young protocol. So what happens to that? So this need to be thought through to be implemented in the governance so that ICP becomes, for a very long lasting
Very fair
token.
point. And there are ideas around like, okay, should there be a certain number of power maximum allocated to a thing? We have some people thinking about one person, one vote kind of models. But again, like these are design spaces are open, but I just wanted to hear your feedback. Anyone else that wants to? Or?
I got my answer.
Okay.
Now. So one of the areas I think is just absolutely fascinating that I believe only DFINITY is working on is the intersection of Web3 and Web2 through the use of HTTP outcalls. And one great example of that is the CKBTC canister talking to the Chainalysis KYT API. Where I'm going with this is, I believe next month, the verifiable credentials are going to get launched. It's part of the roadmap that was recently released. I'm incredibly excited. And I think to the extent that the governance system can introduce a closer one person, one vote to make it a little bit more democratic, a little bit oligopolistic, just depending on how much capital you control. Even if it ends up relying a little bit on certain Web2 ecosystems, I think that would be an improvement to the governance system.
There are amazing things there. There are teams like Decide AI that are thinking about proof of personhood. Dom had from his original post. I mean, this is a problem statement which we think our team, our ecosystem would love to solve.
Yeah, and so piggybacking on both, I think, if a participant is no longer active or passed away or, his participation passes to others, I think it could be interesting to think about a system where, let's say if the person is not active for 5 years, then goes back automatically to the DAO, his voting rights or something like that, because there's a project on Wills that allows you to automatically transfer your tokens, whichever they are, to another wallet if you pass away or if your wallet is not active for 10 years. So thinking about the future, I think that's important. That's related also to the proof of person. But to answer your question, what I would love to see is, innovation on the SNS side that can feed back into the NNS if it's a positive, plus for the community.
It's a bigger design space, so certainly amazing. Really running late on time, but thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I think I enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.